The world of Drachia has long been trapped in a cycle. It begins with an awakening. The humans that dwell here begin to exhibit mystical powers. Some go strong, fast, and tough. Their physical prowess becomes rightly feared. Others find that they gain vast and profound insight into the mechanisms of the world around them. Through ingenuity, they build extraordinary machines with seemingly impossible capabilities. Others still find that they have command over the elements of nature and the minds of others. These gifted individuals gather together to form the three clans: the warriors, the engineers, and the mages. The awakening is followed by war. Emboldened by the potency of their new powers, the three clans inevitably find themselves in conflict. Using their unique gifts to fight one another, they hone themselves on the whetstone of battle. Generations come and go. The origins of the war long forgotten by living memory. When the land is ravaged, and it seems that the humans are on the brink of self-destruction, they realize that they must make peace and cooperate, or be doomed. It's then that the shadows come. This is the deciding moment. Either humanity's newfound alliance will hold against the darkness, or will falter, and they will succumb to destruction. The cycle has continued until now, which means humanity has prevailed thus far. But this time, something is different. The shadows have found a leader, a human prince once thought dead, and his thirst for vengeance has broken the cycle. The awakening has only just begun, and already the shadows have appeared. Humanity is not ready. The clan's only hope is help from the Andoril, a godlike race that dwell in the hidden city of Dimara. The intentions of the Andoril are enigmatic, but one thing is certain. Only a single person deemed worthy may enter Dimara, and you'll be damned if it isn't going to be you. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play. And today we're going to talk about The Legacy of Thracks: The Awakening. The Legacy of Thracks is a fantasy adventure game that draws on Euro mechanisms. It's a competitive game for 1 to 4 players that takes about 30 minutes per player. You are the leader of one of 3 human clans, and you must traverse the war-torn land of Drachia, collecting ancient relics and mystical crystals and proving yourself in battle in order to overcome the magical barriers and be the first to enter the mystical city of Dimara. In a 4-player game, one player will become the fallen prince Mordred, and in the shadow mode, Mordred will seek to prevent any of the other players from entering Dimara, so that they might cover all of Drachia in shadow. In this video, we're going to learn all about the game. We'll cover the components, setting up the game, and how to play. If you want to jump straight to the game rules or find something specific, you can find all the sections of this video linked in the description down below. Just before we dive in, please note that the components in this video are prototypes and they're not the final versions. And I'd like to thank Balash Sveda for sponsoring this video. Let's start by taking a look at the components. In this section, we'll look at all the components you'll get in the core game box. These are the components you'll need for every game, regardless of who is playing. You'll get a rulebook, a storybook, a game board, 4 magical barriers, 2 game length adjusters, 1 custom production die, 1 day marker, 55 crystals in 4 different colors, 30 relics, 36 quest cards, 13 bonus cards, 26 battle cards, 6 village advantage cards, and 3 Lost Souls figures. Next, let's look at the components that'll be used by each individual player in a game. There are 4 resource sheets, 1 per player, 4 reference sheets, 1 per player. 4 double-sided influence tokens, 1 for each faction, 40 roads, which will be 10 per player, 80 tokens, 20 per player, 40 flags, which is 10 per player, 63 action cards, which is 21 for each clan. There are none for the shadow player. There are 4 miniatures: Hector, leader of the warrior clan, Gimdro, the engineer clan hero, Adriel, the mage clan hero, and Mordred, the leader of the shadow army. Each faction also has a board depicting a skill tree. This will only be used in the clan mode's advanced version of the game. Next are the components that are only used by the shadow player in shadow mode. There's the Shadow Player character sheet, a Shadow Power marker, 9 double-sided curse tokens, 7 darkness cards, 1 Shadow Game board extension. Finally, the components that are used only for the solo mode of the game. There are 36 event cards, 3 chance cards, and 1 Arwell's Blessing reference card. And now that we've had a chance to look through the components, let's look at setting up the game. Drachia has a long history, and so there are many periods that you could emulate. You must first decide which part of its history you will try to recreate. So before setting up the game, consider these different game modes, game lengths, and difficulty levels. There are currently 4 game modes, including solo play, but there are further modes in development, so keep an eye on the Kickstarter page when it launches. Now we can choose between the basic game, clan mode, shadow mode, or the solo mode. The basic game incorporates all the fundamental mechanisms of the game, and unlike the other modes, it's entirely symmetrical. The clan mode is similar to the basic game. It introduces asymmetry into the factions, allowing players to play with a clan-specific action deck and develop asymmetrical powers. Both of these game modes support 2 to 4 players. The Shadow mode incorporates all the rules of the clan mode and introduces a version of the Shadow player role, which features unique rules that make them much more powerful than the clan players. You can play Shadow mode with 2, 3, or 4 players. The clans will have to collaborate in order to overcome the Shadow player. But be careful. In the end, only one player can win. The solo mode modifies the rules of the Shadow mode, replacing the Shadow player with an automated opponent. You'll need to know how to play the other game modes in order to play the solo mode. During setup, we also choose whether we will play a rush, normal, or epic game. This simply adjusts the length of the game and the number of magical barriers that you must overcome in order to succeed. Rush mode has 6 rounds and lasts 90 minutes. Normal mode has 9 rounds and lasts 2 to 3 hours. And the epic mode plays all 12 rounds and lasts 4 to 5 hours. Finally, you can choose a difficulty level. The difficulty refers to the challenge level of the magical barriers that players must overcome. There are 4 difficulty levels: easy, which is green, normal, which is yellow, hardcore, which is red, and nightmare, which is black. Note that making it harder increases the difficulty for all the clans, which makes it easier for the Shadow player, if you have one. In this section of the video, we're going to look at the setup for the basic game. Most of this setup also applies to the other game modes. If something only applies to the basic game, I'll call this out. Any changes to the setup needed for the clan, shadow, and solo modes will be covered in the appropriate sections later in this video. We'll start with the setup for the main play area. Place the board in the middle of the table. Place the village advantage cards face up next to the board. Place the day marker on the day 1 space on the left-hand side of the game board. Place 1 lost soul figure on each of the 3 temple locations at the center of the game board. We'll set out the starting resources on the board as well. Place 1 crystal on each mine location according to its color. Green crystals on green mine locations, yellow crystals on yellow mines, and so on. There are 4 green, 2 yellow, 2 red, and 1 purple mine on the board. Place 1 relic on each shrine location. There are 6 shrines on the game board. Place on the market near the center of the board 3 relics, 3 green crystals, 2 yellow crystals, and 1 red crystal. Place the remaining relics, crystals, and the production die next to the game board. Now we're going to choose the difficulty and game length by setting up the magical barrier track. Choose a difficulty level. The difficulty is indicated by the color at the top of the track. Place the chosen track on the game board. If you are playing the epic game mode, leave the barrier open. Otherwise, choose a game length marker and place it over the magical barrier track. This will reduce the number of magical barriers that players must overcome. Now we're going to set up the decks of cards that will be used in the game. The setup for the decks varied slightly depending on your game mode. Shuffle and set out the battle cards. Remove from the quest cards and bonus cards any cards that are marked with the hourglass symbol. These are only used in the shadow mode and solo mode. Shuffle and set out the bonus cards and the quest cards. If you're playing the basic game mode, all players will share the same action deck. Shuffle all the action cards together into one deck and set it next to the game board. Give each player a reference card, a resource sheet, tokens in one color, which will include 10 roads, 10 flags, 20 colored player tokens, and 1 influence token. Each player sets their starting resources: 0 silver, 0 gold, 0 mana, 5 hero hit points, and 0 glory points. Each player draws 1 battle card, 1 quest card, and 1 action card. In the basic game, this could be a warrior, mage, or engineer action card. Place the hero miniatures on their starting locations. Hector of the warriors is placed in the red capital. Adriel of the purple mages is placed in the purple capital. Gimdro of the green engineers is placed in the green capital. And Mortrid of the black shadow is placed in the black capital. In the basic game mode, you may randomize the starting locations or distribute them however you like. And now the setup for the basic game is complete. Here we can see a 2-player game set up at normal game length on easy difficulty, in which Adriel of the Mage clan will attempt to reach Dimara before Hector of the Warrior clan. Choose a starting player by any means you see fit, and you're ready to play the game. In Legacy of Thracks, you're all playing as clans competing for access to the legendary city of Dimara. You must complete quests, collect relics, conquer the land of Drachia, and defeat each other in combat if you are to prove yourself the most worthy. The game may end in one of 2 ways. If a player enters Dimara, they will trigger the final round of the game. The current round will finish so that each player has had an equal number of turns, and if no other player reaches Dimara, then that player is the winner. If any other players reach Dimara during that final round, the winner is determined from amongst the players in Dimara by victory points. All other players are eliminated. The game may also end after 6, 9, or 12 rounds based on the length of game chosen during setup. Rounds are tracked by the day marker on the side of the board. If no players reach Dimara in this time, then a winner is chosen based on victory points. During a round, players will each take a turn in clockwise order from the starting player. Once each player has taken a turn, the day marker is advanced and a new round begins. A player's turn is divided into 2 phases, the production phase and the action phase. During the production phase, resources on the board will be renewed and the player will receive some income. During the action phase, the player will use their resources to take actions on the game board. These might include moving your hero, conquering locations, battling other heroes, manipulating the lost souls, completing quests, overcoming the magical barriers, or even sieging another player's capital. Once a player chooses to stop taking actions or is no longer able to do so, their turn ends. Whenever you decide to do on your turn, you should be focusing on those magical barriers. After all, entering Dimara is the main goal, and if you start down the path to Dimara and you cannot afford to complete the journey, you'll find yourself seriously stuck. We're going to look at the magical barriers in more detail in just a moment, but first let's take a look at your player area and in particular your resource sheet. In the basic mode, you will find 2 useful things in your player area. This reference sheet, which acts as a player aid, reminding you of everything that happens during a player turn and a round of the game. On the reverse, we can see all the different locations that you'll visit on the game board and the effect of what you might do there. Here on the resource sheet, we can see 5 different types of resource. These represent your hero and their assets. You can see the symbol for each resource on the left. The numerical row in the middle simply helps you track the value of the other rows. You cannot gain resources past the indicated maximums. The bottom row is glory. We acquire glory through battling another clan. We can capture fortresses on the board, duel other heroes, and siege other players' capitals. Each victory grants us 1 glory point, and when we advance past these highlighted triggers, we can overcome a magical barrier. The second row is hit points. Some actions take a toll on your heroes and cannot be completed unless the hero has hit points available. A hero can never have more than 5 hit points and can never go below 1. They're legendary heroes after all, they can't be killed. Capturing castles and fortresses, losing in duels and sieges, and traveling through the magical portals all cost hit points. While a hero can't go below 1 hit point, when they are at 1 hit point they're severely wounded and can't take any actions except for location actions that heal them. This means they must visit the healing well, the source of life, or their capital city. The row above the numbers here is mana. Mana is used to move the lost souls around the map. You gain 2 mana each turn, but you may gain mana from other means, such as action cards as well. The next row is gold. This is the most important resource in the game. Gold is required to move your hero around the board, to activate tunnels, temples, villages, and the source of life, and to bypass any magical barriers that you haven't completed by other means. The top row is silver. If you ever gain gold but you have 10 already, then you can gain silver instead. Silver is the same as gold, but it can't be used to pay for your hero's movement. You may pay a single cost in a mixture of gold and silver, provided it's not paying for movement. There are 2 types of items in the game: magical crystals and relics. These are represented by tokens on the board, and they're stored in your capital city to remind other players that they can steal them by sieging your capital. You also have a hand of cards made up of battle cards, quest cards, and action cards. The type and number of cards you possess is public information, but the cards are kept hidden. You can hold any number of these cards in your hand. You may also have a bonus card that is kept hidden. You can only have one of these at a time. You may also have village advantage cards. These are kept face up for all to see. Next, let's talk about how to get to Dimara. After all, this is a race. The magical barrier is the gateway to Dimara. In order to enter, you will have to travel to the Nordic portal, move along the magical path, and move through each of the magical barriers. All of these carry a cost in hit points and gold. The only action you can take here is to move, which also means your silver is useless. You only have 1 chance to make it to Dimara, so if you fall short, then you will remain on the path until the end of the game. You earn victory points for progressing on the path, which can still be useful if no one makes it to Dimara. The only thing you can do once you're stuck on the magical path is to manipulate lost souls. And maybe you can find a way to use this to your advantage. Here are some helpful tips to consider before leaving Drachia. Traveling to the Nordic portal costs 1 hit point, which is the same cost for all portals. Traveling along the magical path costs 3 gold, which is a special cost for this path. Each magical barrier has a cost in gold and hit points, which you must pay if you've not bypassed these barriers. These costs can get expensive quickly, so you want to make sure you have bypassed as many as possible before you set off. When you bypass a magical barrier, you place 1 of your player tokens on it. Now your hero can pass by without paying the cost. There are 3 methods you can use during the game to bypass the magical barriers: collecting relics, earning glory points, and completing quests. When a player has collected 5 relics, they may spend them to overcome any 1 magical barrier on the track that is marked with the relic symbol. Discard the relics and place 1 of your player tokens on the barrier that you wish to bypass. You may only do this on your turn. You do not have to spend your relics if you don't want to, but be careful, other players can lay siege to your capital or duel you and steal them away. When you earn enough glory points, at 4, 7, and 10, you may overcome 1 magical barrier. This could happen on your turn or another player's turn. Place 1 of your player tokens to indicate this. You may choose any barrier. It's only possible to bypass 3 barriers in total using glory. In the shadow mode, the shadow player can cause a clan player to lose glory. If this causes the clan player's glory to fall below a trigger for a magical barrier which they had attained, then the shadow player may remove the clan's player token from 1 barrier which they've overcome. It can be any of that clan player's tokens. You start the game with 1 quest card, and you may acquire more during the game as well. There are 2 things you will need to do in order to complete a quest. You must possess the required crystals, and you must meet the stipulated condition. There are 4 colors of crystal of escalating rarity: green, yellow, red, and purple. The purple crystal is wild and can be used in lieu of any other color. A quest can be completed at any time you meet the condition. This means during your turn or other players' turns. When you complete a quest, reveal the card so that players can see you have met the condition. Then, you must pay by discarding crystals from your capital city that match the crystals on the card. The colors must be exact, unless you pay using a purple crystal. Discard the quest card and bypass 1 magical barrier. You must bypass a barrier with a color that matches the crystals you've spent. You can see that there are 5 kinds of magical barrier: white, green, yellow, red, and purple. Any quest card can be used to bypass a white barrier. The others must match the crystals you've spent to complete the quest. In this case, purple is still wild, so if you spent any purple crystals to complete your quest, you can complete any magical barrier. This is still true if you have an ability that changes the color of the crystals that you use. So if you use a yellow crystal on this quest, you may only pass a yellow barrier. We all want to be the only one to get to Dimara, but not all plans work out. If only one player makes it to Dimara, you won't need to calculate victory points. That player's the winner. If 2 or more players enter Dimara, the victory points will decide a winner from among the players that made it. If a player didn't make it to Dimara, they're eliminated. If no players make it to Dimara, then victory points will determine a winner. There is no scoring earned during the game. All points are calculated at the end. 1 point for each road they've built, 1 victory point for each relic and green, yellow, and red crystal in their capital, 3 points for each purple crystal, 1 point for each castle, fortress, and village you control at the end of the game, 1 point for each unspent point of mana, and the sum total victory points awarded to each barrier the players overcome. These are the points shown in the brown space below your player token on the barrier track. The corresponding value for the player's position on the barrier track also awards points. This is the barrier that their hero is standing on, and the points awarded are shown in the green space at the bottom. The player with the most victory points is the winner. In the case of a tie, the tied players have saved the world together. Now that we understand how the game is won and lost, let's look at a player's turn and the actions they can take in the game. The game is played in rounds called days. A round starts with the starting player taking a turn and moves clockwise around the table. The starting player and turn order will not change during the game. Once each player has taken a turn, the round is over. At the beginning of each round, the starting player must move the day tracker before taking their turn. When the day marker moves onto a green market space, the market is reset to its starting condition. This means the available goods are changed to match the goods available during setup. 3 green crystals, 2 yellow crystals, 1 red crystal, and 3 relics. If the day marker moves onto a red space that matches the duration of the game, then this will be the last round of the game. Let's look at how a turn works. A turn has 2 phases, the production phase and the action phase. The production phase has 3 steps that you must take in order. The first step is to gather resources. You will gain 6 gold and 2 additional gold for each castle you control. You'll also gain 2 mana. The second step is to roll the production die. The die has 3 production faces, 2 blank faces, and 1 reroll face. If you roll a production face, you must replenish any mines of the matching color that do not have an available crystal. Note that a mine cannot have more than 1 crystal available on it. The production faces also show a number of relic symbols. The player to the left of the current player must place the number of relics shown on empty shrines. Each shrine can only hold 1 relic, and the player must place as many as possible. If the reroll face is shown, the current player may choose to reroll. If they choose not to, nothing happens. If a blank face is shown, nothing happens. After rolling, the player may spend 1 gold to reroll the production die. The final step of the production phase is to place your influence token. The influence token can be placed on locations on the board. During this step, you may put the token onto the board, move it around the board, leave it where it is, flip it over, or even remove it from the board. The influence token alters the cost of moving to the location where it is present. The green side decreases the cost by 1, while the red side increases it by 2. Influence tokens affect every player, including their owner. It costs 1 gold for each distance section to move into a location. In the rare case that 3 influence tokens were placed in the same location, 2 on the red side and 1 on the green side, the total cost to move there would be 4 gold. 1 for the distance and 3 for the influence markers. Once you've placed your influence token, your action phase can begin. The action phase is where the vast bulk of the gameplay will take place. During your action phase, you will take actions until you cannot afford to take any more, or you choose to stop. Most actions have a cost in gold or hit points, but some cost mana, relics, or crystals. There are 6 types of actions available in the game. Move your hero or any lost soul, perform a location action, buy an action card, play an action card, initiate a battle or combat, or complete a magical barrier, which occurs when you complete a quest, spend 5 relics, or attain glory. We're going to go through these and I will explain how each one works, but I've already covered the complete a magical barrier action earlier in the video, and you can find that section in the description below. So let's learn about the other 5 actions. Let's talk about movement. There are 2 types of figures that move on the board, heroes and lost souls. They both move around Drachia by traveling between locations. A figure's movement always ends on a location. You may only move your hero figure, but lost souls are neutral figures. Any player can utilize any lost soul during their turn. When a hero moves between locations, they always pay gold. When a lost soul is moved between locations, the player pays 1 mana. A lost soul always pays 1 mana to move between 2 locations, while a hero must pay gold equal to the distance between the locations. The distance is equal to the number of sections. In this case, the hero would have to pay 3 gold. A hero can continue to move around the board so long as they have the gold to pay for it. However, there are some restrictions to movement that you must consider. If a hero enters a location with another hero, they must immediately duel before doing anything else. If the location is a fortress or castle owned by another player, you must be able to capture it. If the location is an opponent's capital, you must siege it. If you want to enter a castle or a fortress that is under another player's control, but you can't afford to capture it, then you may not enter it. A lost soul doesn't have these same restrictions. A lost soul can move to any location. The only thing that a lost soul cares about is whether there is an enemy hero present. A lost soul cannot take a location action if they're in the same location as a hero that doesn't belong to the active player. Before we move on, let's quickly talk about roads. Each player starts with 10 roads in their player color. Roads are built using either the Village Advantage cards or Green Engineer action cards. Village Advantage cards are gained through the Village Location action. Roads are placed on the distance sections on the board as long as they are not red. When a hero moves between locations, they do not have to pay the gold cost for the section with their road on it. If an opposing hero moves along that route, they must pay the normal price. And the player who owns the road then increases their gold by 1 for each road section that they own along the route taken. There is a limit of 1 road per section. So while this is totally legal, this is not allowed. Roads cannot be moved, removed, or built over by opponents. The owner of a road may only move it if they wish to place another road and already have 10 on the board. You cannot build a road on the magical path. Now that we understand how to move around the board, let's take a look at the location actions. A location action becomes available when a hero or a lost soul moves onto a location. In most cases, the figure will resolve the location's action, but there are a few things to note. If there is an enemy hero present, you must duel them first. If the location is a fortress or castle under the control of an enemy, you must be able to capture it. If you cannot afford to capture it, you cannot move into the space. You must have just ended a move there. This means that if your hero starts your turn in a location, or you wish to repeat a location action at the same location, you must move your hero away first, and then move the figure back, paying the cost for both movements. Some locations can only be activated by heroes. Some locations can only be activated by lost souls. Lost souls cannot take a location action in a location with a hero that doesn't belong to the active player. Taking into account these exceptions, in most cases a figure will move on to a location and then will choose whether or not to take the action. There are 13 different kinds of locations on the board, and each has its own effects, and most come with a cost. The cost is commonly gold, hit points, or both. It's helpful to remember that lost souls can never pay hit points for anything. Only heroes can do that. There are 6 locations that can be activated by both heroes and lost souls, 6 locations that can only be activated by heroes, and 1 location that can only be activated by lost souls. All of the locations and who can activate them are shown on this player reference card. Let's take a look at these in more detail. I'm going to start with the 6 locations that cannot be activated by lost souls, like our capital cities. Each player begins the game in their capital city. When you move here, you are restored to your maximum hit points. Your relics and crystals are stored in this area on the board so that other players can see them and decide whether they want to siege you. If you move to another player's capital, you will lay siege to it. We'll cover sieging later. Now let's talk about buildings you can capture, fortresses, and castles. When you take control of a building, you take a flag in your player color and place it on the location on the board. The capture spaces on the fortress and castle are shown in red. This means if it's controlled by another player, you must capture it if you want to move there. However, the capture spaces on villages are white, which means you don't have to capture them to move there. When you move on to a fortress, you can capture it. If it's controlled by another player, you must capture it. In order to capture a fortress, you must pay 1 hit point, and then you gain 1 glory. When you move on to a castle, you can capture it. If it is controlled by another player, you must capture it. To capture a castle costs 2 hit points, which means you need at least 3. Once you've paid the cost, place your flag there and remove the opponents if necessary. Then, you may immediately draw an action card and gain 2 gold. The castle will also give you 2 gold in the production phase, if you can hold on to it. While castles cannot be captured directly by lost souls, they may use a tunnel. More on that later. The next location is the shrine. When a hero visits a shrine, they can collect the relic there. There's no cost for this, simply place the relic in your capital city. The next location is the healing well. When a hero visits a healing well, they're restored to full hit points. There's no cost. Simply adjust your resource sheet. The final location a lost soul cannot activate is the Source of Life. When a hero visits the Source of Life, they receive 1 hit point up to their maximum. They may also buy a bonus card. The hero pays at least 2 gold to draw a bonus card. They may pay more to draw extra cards, 1 per additional gold paid, but they only keep 1 card and shuffle the rest back into the deck. The bonus card is kept secret, but may be played any time during the owner's turn and will certainly help the player to reach Dimara. There is only one location that only lost souls can activate, the mine. When a lost soul visits the mine, the player that moved them may collect the crystal there and place it in their capital city. If there is no crystal, nothing is collected. If a hero belonging to another player, other than the active player, is on the mine, then the lost soul cannot collect the crystal. Now we'll look at locations that can be activated by both lost souls and heroes, starting with the village. When a figure is moved onto a village, you can take control of the village for 2 gold. Once you've paid, place your flag on the location and choose a face-up village advantage card. These cards offer you 2 passive bonuses during the game. You will gain the top one immediately upon collecting the card. The bottom power can be unlocked if you control the number of villages shown on the left. Ignore the symbol on the right for now, that's used in other game modes. Some of the village advantage cards allow you to build roads. Remember, these cards and the green engineer action cards are the only ways to build roads. You can also take control of a village from an opposing player for 2 gold. After paying, replace their flag with yours. Instead of choosing a village advantage card from the board, take one of the face-up village advantage cards owned by the player who just lost control. The next location is the temple. When you visit the temple, you can pay 2 gold to draw a quest card or 3 gold to draw 2 and keep 1. Shuffle the other back into the deck. Next, let's look at the Armoury. When you visit the Armoury, you may pay 2 gold or 1 hit point to draw 1 battle card. Note that you cannot buy 2 battle cards from the same Armoury in a single turn, and lost souls cannot pay hit points for battle cards. We'll cover battle cards later in the section on battles. So let's take a look at the market action. When you visit the market, you may sell up to 3 cards for 1 gold each. These can be quest, action, battle, or bonus cards. You may also freely trade any number of the crystals or relics in your capital city with the items in the market, provided you exchange an equal number. These last 2 locations allow for special movement around the board. When you activate the portal, you can move to any other portal or your own capital city. This is also how you reach the Nordic portal to begin your journey to Dimara. Using a portal costs heroes 1 hit point, but lost souls don't have to pay anything at all. The last location to cover is the tunnel. You must pay 1 gold to activate the tunnel. You may immediately travel to a castle that an opposing player controls and take control of it. Replace the opponent's flag with your own. Then receive all the benefits: 2 gold and an action card. This action cannot be used to travel to castles you control or to castles that no one controls. This action allows lost souls to capture castles even though they cannot in the normal fashion. And that's it for location actions. There is a mysterious additional location on the board, the Frozen Island. Don't worry about that, it's used in a future expansion. So let's cover buying an action card. At any time during your turn, you may spend 2 gold to draw the top card of the action deck. That's it. There are 2 types of action cards, those with a lightning bolt and those without. Action cards that don't show a lightning bolt can only be played during your turn as an action. When you play the card, you resolve the text shown and discard it. Action cards that show the lightning bolt are instant action cards and can be played at any time. Action cards don't have a cost, and you can play as many as you have available to you. The final action we're going to look at is combat. In any game mode, there are 2 types of combat that might occur. A duel takes place when a hero moves onto a location occupied by an opposing hero, and a siege takes place when a hero moves onto an opponent's capital city that is not occupied by the same opponent's hero. A capital city occupied by its hero is considered to be impregnable and cannot be attacked. Furthermore, if you occupy an opponent's capital and their hero moves onto it, your hero is automatically defeated. Otherwise, both a duel and a siege are resolved in more or less the same way, but the outcomes for winning and losing are slightly different. In combat, each player will try to earn the highest combat power. In the basic game, you receive 1 combat power for each fortress you control. Each capital city is marked with a 3 to show that it adds 3 to its total combat power during combat. You may earn additional points by playing battle cards from your hand. The total number of battle cards you have is not a secret, so you must tell your opponent if they ask. Each player secretly chooses a number of battle cards from their hand. You cannot play more battle cards than your current hit point value will allow. At 1 or 2 hit points, you may only play 1 card. At 3 or 4 hit points, you may play up to 2 cards, and at 5 hit points, you may play up to 3 cards. Once both players have committed, they reveal the number of cards they've played as well as their values. Each card has a value between 0 and 3. It also shows a blessing and may show a clan bonus in the top left, which is not used in this game mode. A player does not have to commit any cards to the combat if they don't want to. The player with the highest total combat power from their fortresses or capital city and from their battle cards is the winner. In the event of a tie, the attacking player is the winner. After combat, regardless of who won, each player may receive the blessing from one of the battle cards they've played. Then, if the combat was a duel, the winner receives 1 glory point, steals 1 item of their choice, if there are any available, from the defeated player's capital city, steals 1 gold from the defeated player. If the defeated player has no gold, the winner still receives a gold. And they place the defeated hero on a neighboring location of the winner's choice, which excludes other players' capitals, a castle or fortress currently held by another player, or a location on which another hero is situated. The defeated player draws 1 new battle card from the supply and may, after the winner has moved their hero to a neighboring location, pay 2 gold to place their hero on their own capital instead. If the combat was a siege, then the winner receives 1 glory point, and if the winner is also the attacker, they steal 2 items of their choice, if there are any available, from the defeated player's capital. The attacking player may choose to spend 1 hit point to steal an additional item, and may do this as long as they have hit points left and there are items available. They also get to steal 1 gold from the defeated player, and if the defeated player has no gold, the winner still receives 1. If the owner of the capital wins, then the player can steal 1 item from the other player, just like in a duel, provided they have any. The defeated player randomly draws 1 new battle card from the supply, and that's it. You now know enough to play the basic game. When you're ready, come back and we'll learn about the more advanced game modes. In the setup game mode section, I've talked about the clan mode, shadow mode, and solo mode. So let's start by learning the clan mode. The clan mode introduces asymmetrical factions to the game. It can be played with 2 to 4 players, and each player will take on the role of the warrior clan, engineer clan, mage clan, or the shadow. The game ends in the same manner as the basic game, and victory is calculated in the same way as well. There are 5 new concepts in this mode. Each player has their own action card deck, except for the shadow player. Every hero has a skill tree with distinct paths. Heroes gain combat power in different ways. The clan modifier on the battle cards is used, and the second half of the village advantage card can be unlocked in a new way. You'll only need 1 new component for this game mode, the character sheets. There are 4, 1 for each faction. Set up the game in the same manner as the basic mode with the following changes. Do not shuffle the action card decks together. Give each player their own action card deck, which they will shuffle. Note that the shadow player doesn't get an action card deck. Instead, they can unlock a power to draw cards from other players' decks. Then, proceed to the player area setup. Each player receives a character sheet and places it with their resource sheet in front of them. If you choose to play the shadow, make sure you use the brown side of your character sheet marked with the tagline, "No matter how dark the night is." Place 2 of your player tokens, 1 for each of your available skill lines. Place each player's hero in the appropriate capital. They may not be randomized in this game mode. During setup, when you collect your starting cards, a battle card, quest card, and action card, make sure you draw your action card from your clan deck. The shadow player does not start with an action card. Your hero sheet shows 2 skill lines, a hero line on the left and a clan line on the right. Over the course of the game, your hero will earn development points by performing their special action. When you earn a development point, you spend it immediately by advancing 1 space on one of your 2 skill lines. So there's no game components to track development points. When the token reaches level with an ability, you'll unlock that ability for the rest of the game, and you can use it immediately if it's applicable. The special task is a task you must perform. Each clan's is different. You may only gain a development point on your turn, and you may only gain 1 per turn. In Hector's case, when he receives his first glory point each turn, he receives 1 development point as well. The Engineer clan and the Mage clan cannot complete their special action at the market location. They may complete it by any other method. In the clan mode of the game, you will always draw action cards from your own personal deck, unless you're the shadow player who may not draw action cards until they unlock the Hawker ability on their clan line. Then they may draw action cards from any deck they choose. If a clan's action deck ever runs out, simply shuffle the discard and reset it. In clan mode, you can unlock the second power on the village advantage cards in 2 ways. Control the number of villages depicted on the left, or you are the clan depicted on the right. Unlike in the basic game, each clan starts with a distinct basic combat power, which is augmented slightly differently. Players have a base combat power, and they may receive an extra bonus based on the location where the fight takes place. Hector the warrior has 4 combat power and receives a bonus for fortresses as in the basic game, and receives +2 combat power if you're dueling while on a fortress location. Adriel the mage has 3 combat power, receives a bonus for fortresses, and receives +2 combat power when dueling on a relic location. Gimdro the engineer has 2 combat power, receives bonuses for villages they control instead of fortresses, and receives +3 combat power if they're dueling on a village location. Mordred is the scariest fighter. Mordred the Shadow has 5 combat power. They receive a bonus for fortresses and receive 2 combat power if they're dueling on an armory, or +1 combat power if they're dueling on a village location. In clan mode, we also use the clan modifiers on the battle cards, which is seen here in the top left. This benefits the matching clan when played, adding the combat power shown to the card's total when played. Although there are no battle cards for the shadow player, they have an ability on their skill tree called Chameleon, which might help. And that's it for the clan mode, so let's take a look at the shadow mode. In the Shadow mode, we join at a time when Mordred the Fallen Prince has disrupted the cycle of Drachia and brought the Shadow forces to bear on the human clans before they are due. This mode supports 2 to 4 players, and 1 player must play as the Shadow. Shadow mode introduces a semi-cooperative element to the game if you play with 3 or more players. You will need to understand the basic game mode as well as the additional rules used in the clan mode. The Warrior Clan, Engineer Clan, and Mage Clan all play in the same manner as they do in the clan mode, but the Shadow player is much more powerful. In the Shadow mode, the Shadow player is always the first player. The game ends in the same manner as the basic game, and victory is calculated in the same way for the clans. This means that there can still only be one overall winner. Mordred has their own villainous goal, to prevent all the other players from reaching Dimara. If any clan player reaches Dimara, then the Shadow player automatically loses. However, if no clan players reach Dimara, then victory points are calculated, and the clans will be very hard-pressed to overcome Mordred, who receives a huge victory point bonus. This means some cooperation amongst the clan players is required to slow down Mordred, but not too much. Each one still wants to be the only one to reach Dimara. This mode uses all of the components needed for the clan mode, and the new components used in this mode are used by the Shadow player, who will need 1 Shadow board extension, 1 Shadow power marker, 7 darkness cards, and 9 curse tokens. The game is set up in the same manner as the clan mode, but with 2 changes and 4 additional steps. The first change to setup is that you add the Hourglass cards back into the quest card deck and bonus card deck. The second change is that the Shadow player does not draw a quest card during setup or ever in this mode. There are 5 additional steps. Place the Shadow board extension to the left of the game board next to the turn marker. Place the Shadow power marker on the 0 space of the Shadow power track. Give the Shadow player the Shadow character sheet on the purple side showing the tagline, "When I rise, others fall." The Shadow player takes one of their player tokens and puts it onto a space on the Metamorphosis track that matches one of the clans in play. Shuffle the darkness cards and give them to the Shadow player. Place the curse tokens in a common supply nearby. The Shadow player has all the same powers as the clans, but has powerful additional abilities. In the center of the Shadow board extension are the Sources of Darkness. The Shadow player must collect crystals and relics to turn these on. Once active, they will have powerful negative effects on the clan players. Over time and through certain actions, the Shadow player increases their Shadow power. If the Shadow power reaches an amount, they receive a darkness card, which also triggers a strong negative effect on clan players. Each day, the Shadow player will mimic one of the clans, gaining access to their clan assets. The Shadow player can cast powerful black magic when located at a village they control. The Shadow player doesn't have a skill tree anymore, but these powers more than make up for that, and they've retained the combat power and bonus that they use in the clan mode. Otherwise, the Shadow player still has all the regular capabilities of a clan player, except that they do not draw quest cards or complete them, and they may not travel to the Nordic portal. First, let's look at the Shadow player's Metamorphosis power. The Shadow player chooses which clan to mimic during setup. If there is more than one clan player in the game, the token will move between each player's clan during the Shadow player's production phase. When the Shadow player mimics one of the clans, there are 3 effects. The Shadow player can buy action cards belonging to that clan player. They gain access to all the unlocked abilities on that clan player's character sheet, and they gain the bonus on any battle cards they play that match that clan. Around the outside of the Shadow board is the Shadow power track. This represents the growing influence of the Shadow player. The Shadow player can gain Shadow power in 4 ways. There is a reminder of this on the Shadow player board. At the beginning of their turn, the Shadow player receives 2 Shadow power. Increase Shadow power by 1 each time a clan player unlocks a new ability on the skill tree. The Shadow player may spend 5 relics, or when they amass 4, 7, or 10 glory, they may choose to either gain 2 Shadow power or take 2 items in any combination from the relics or crystals. Each time a magical barrier is overcome for the first time, the Shadow player either earns 1 Shadow power or receives a relic or a crystal. There is also a reminder here on the Shadow player's player board that when they reach 4, 7, or 10 glory, or when they want to trade in 5 relics that they've accrued, they can have 2 shadow power or any 2 items from amongst the relics and crystals. At any time, whenever the shadow power track reaches 7 or 8 shadow power, the shadow player must immediately choose, receive 1 darkness card and reset the shadow power to 0, or do nothing. When the shadow power track reaches 9 or would exceed it, it is immediately reset to 0. The shadow player receives 1 darkness card and 1 glory point, and additionally, each clan player loses a glory point. If this causes a clan player to drop below a trigger point on their glory track, then the shadow player must choose and return one of their player tokens from a magical barrier to them. The player may gain glory and overcome the barrier again later on. The shadow player can earn darkness cards using shadow power. There are 7 of them and each one is different. The shadow player can only play these during their turn, but may wait to play them on future turns. There is no limit to the number of darkness cards they may hold. The influence of the shadow player increases when in a village they control, and they may access their black magic powers. There are 4 powers that can be used, and the shadow player is reminded of them on their board here. Sacrifice 1 relic or crystal from your capital to gain a battle card. Sacrifice a total of 4 relics and or crystals in any combination to choose a magical barrier that at least 1 player has overcome. Choose 1 clan's player token and return it to them. They have no longer overcome that barrier. However, each other clan that had not overcome the barrier may overcome it now for free. Pay 2 gold to return 1 player token from the Sacrificial altar to its owner. Place any number of relics and or crystals on the Sources of Darkness. The Sources of Darkness are found in the middle of the shadow player board. Each power is detailed next to a cost. Some powers have 2 phases which increase in strength, so there is a cost for each phase. You cannot activate the second phase before you activate the first. In order to activate a Source of Darkness, the shadow player must collect relics and crystals in the normal manner at their capital, using lost souls at mines, visiting relic locations, using the market, dueling other players, or sieging their capital. And then they must visit a village and take control of it. Once on a village location that they control, the shadow player may commit any of the relics and crystals on their capital to any of the Sources of Darkness spaces. Any area that is completed immediately activates the adjacent power, which significantly slows the progress of the clan players. The clans must work together to stop the shadow player from becoming too powerful. They do this by using the Sacrificial altar. These altars are depicted by candles and skulls on the shadow board. In a game, players will only use the altar where the number of skulls matches the number of clan players. A player may sacrifice any amount and combination of gold, mana, crystals, or relics up to the largest number shown, 8 in a game with 2 clan players. For each thing sacrificed, the player places a token in their player color on the altar. When the number of tokens is equal to the number shown on the altar, the active player may choose to burn all the sacrifices or wait. If they wait, nothing happens and the game continues, unless they've reached the maximum number of sacrifices. Then they must choose to burn the sacrifices. When the sacrifices are burned, check the number burned against the highest number met or exceeded on the altar. Count the number of candles below that number. The player that chose to burn the sacrifices may take either of the following 2 actions once per candle shown. Reduce shadow power by 1, or remove 1 item from the Sources of Darkness. Note that this will cause the power from the Source of Darkness to become inactive if it does not have a full complement of items. The warrior triggers the altar and may reduce power by 2. Remove 2 items or reduce power once and remove 1 item. After resolving the actions against the shadow player, check the distribution of the sacrifices. The player that has contributed the least will take 1 curse token. If all players are tied, no one is cursed. However, if 2 players are tied for lowest, then the shadow player chooses one of them to take a curse token. And if a player has more tokens than any other player on the Sacrificial altar when the sacrifices are burned, they may discard one of their curse tokens. Otherwise, a player may pay 5 gold to discard a curse token at any time, which is recommended because a player with more than 2 curse tokens cannot win the game. They may not enter Dimara, and if victory points are calculated, they are eliminated instead. If any hero reaches Dimara, then the shadow player loses, and any heroes that have entered Dimara may win. Victory points are calculated just as in the base game. If the shadow player is successful, then the game will reach the last day, and on the final day, after the shadow player has finished their turn, the clan players will take turns in the order of who has overcome the most magical barriers, starting with the player who has overcome the most. If 2 players have overcome the same number of barriers, then the shadow player chooses who will play first. After this is resolved, if any clan players have reached Dimara, then determine the victory according to the rules for the basic game. The shadow player cannot use the Nordic portal and cannot enter Dimara, so they will always be eliminated with this outcome. If the shadow player has been successful and no one has entered Dimara, then the clan players calculate their victory points just as they would in the basic game. The shadow player calculates their score in the normal way but gains an extra bonus based on the game length. If it's a rush game, 50 points. If it's a normal game, 60, and in epic mode, 75 victory points. The highest victory points is the winner. If 2 or more clan players have tied on points, then they save the world together. So that's all the rules for Legacy of Thracks, The Awakening. You are now fully equipped with all the information you need to save the world of Drachia, or to cover all of it in shadow. There is a solo mode which I've covered in a second video, which is linked up here, and in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next video and a playthrough of this game. Bye for now!